At around 12:30, we have named Tropical Cyclone Lincoln in the South Gulf of Carpentaria. This is the same tropical low that we have been monitoring for several days now, and whilst we have named it as a tropical cyclone, it remains a Category 1 tropical cyclone, and so a lot of the wind and rain hazards that we've been talking about still continue with pretty much the same risk profile. That said, now that the system has consolidated into a more organised weather system, we will still closely watch it as it approaches the coast during this afternoon. Our current forecast is that we expect Tropical Cyclone Lincoln to cross the southern Gulf of Carpentaria coast in the vicinity of Borroloola and Robinson River at around 7 p.m. tonight. After crossing the coast, that system will downgrade quite quickly to a tropical low. However, the wind and heavy rainfall that is associated with this broad area of circulation, the risk of those hazards still continues. We are expecting gales with damaging wind gusts up to 110 kilometres per hour and heavy rainfall with possibly locally intense rainfall to be associated with this system as it crosses the coast and as it moves across the Northern Territory over the coming days. We've already seen rainfall totals of around 100-120 millimetres in a 24-hour period in Centre Island in the Northern Territory and a similar amount in Burketown in Queensland. And so we know that this system is holding a fair amount of rain. It's reasonable to expect that we could have heavier, more intense 12-hourly rainfall totals of around 100 millimetres as well. The risk of tidal surge or storm tide is not considered to be a great risk with this system. Tides may be higher than usual, however, they're not expected to be significantly above the highest astronomical tide. As this system does track across the Northern Territory, it will bring heavy rainfall, and the flood watch that we have current for the Carpentaria and northern catchments continues and also includes the northern Barkly and northern Tanami flood districts. During today, we have cancelled or finalised our flood warnings for Beswick as the river has dropped below the minor flood level there. We have also finalised the flood warning for the Catherine River at Nipmuc as the river has also dropped below the minor level at that location. A flood warning for minor flooding at Daly River Police Station continues, and it is also reasonable to think that with the flood watch that we have in place, the severe weather that we are expecting over the next few days into early next week, we could see some locations with flood warnings emerging. I would encourage the community to be aware of the local conditions that they have and these windy and rainy conditions that will continue over the weekend where this system moves, and stay up to date with warnings and how they may impact your area.
Thank you. Superintendent Daniel Sheen, Incident Controller, Emergency Operations Centre. Yesterday I mentioned flooding at Beswick community, and I'll just give a quick update in relation to that first. Earlier rains associated with the system have caused the river system there to recede. There's been minor flooding in the Waterhouse River, and a few families in the lower-lying areas were evacuated, as I did mention yesterday. They are in the process of being returned to their houses today. Homes are currently being assessed, and where safe to do so, people will be returned to their houses today. In relation to the Cyclone Lincoln, the Emergency Operations Centre has been established to respond to the Tropical Cyclone Lincoln. The Emergency Operations Centre has been liaising with industry groups and stores and engaging with local communities to ensure that residents remain safe. Preparations for emergency shelters are underway if required. However, I stress at this stage there is no indication to indicate that emergency evacuation shelters will be required in any of the communities that the tropical cyclone will pass past. Local controllers will prepare people in the communities and keep people informed as to what is occurring. There is no need for people to be evacuated from their houses or leave their homes. And we're making sure that communities are safe as the weather event progresses. In terms of food security, local stores have been contacted to ensure that they have plenty of food on stock. Although there may not always be supplies of fresh fruit and vegetables, there are plenty of other food essentials for sustaining life. People with pets in those areas, Robinson River or Borroloola, are reminded that if they are required to move, they cannot take their pets with them to shelters. In terms of roads, there is road restrictions on the Stewart Highway, and delays may be experienced, particularly for detours around roadworks. Carpentaria Highway remains closed, and travellers asked to drive to the conditions and check the road report website for updates on road conditions. And remember, if it's flooded, forget it. Don't risk your life and the lives of others by passing road closure signs and going into areas where there is dangers to road users because of road conditions. During the cyclone as it passes Borroloola and Robinson River, remain inside and stay sheltered as the storm passes. And follow any directions and information from the Secure NT website, the Bureau of Meteorology website and app, and also the Northern Territory Road Weather Road Report app.
Questions?
Is there still a Telstra outage in Borroloola?
There has been communications outages in Borroloola, and that's being worked on as we speak. Yeah.
What kind of an impact is that having with the cyclone coming?
Naturally, telecommunications issues cause us inability to speak to people where we're required to do so. However, there are other options available to us. So in terms of emergency management, it's not impacting us greatly because we can still communicate with our people in Borroloola, and our local controller in Borroloola can communicate with the people in Borroloola and surrounding communities.
And is there any clarity on when that can be expected to be fixed?
Unfortunately, I don't have that information to hand.
There has been some concern from residents about being able to purchase food and power cards using their card, given the Telstra system is down in the community. Do you have any workarounds for that?
Generally, where telecommunications outages are experienced in communities, there are localised arrangements to ensure that people are supplied power cards and other essentials for the necessities of life.
Is that happening currently?
It's not been raised to my attention that's an issue in Borroloola. However, if it is, generally, as I said, it will be managed locally by the local controller and the local agencies at Borroloola. If it does become a prolonged issue, it will be raised, and we can assist that from the Emergency Operations Centre.
Have there been any other evacuations or communities that are at risk of evacuation?
No. So in terms of Beswick, we didn't evacuate anyone from Beswick community. We evacuated some people from houses to safer places in Beswick when the water flowed over the lagoon. There has been no other evacuations in any other community across the Northern Territory, and at this stage with this tropical cyclone, I don't anticipate the areas that are impacted at this stage or may be impacted to be evacuated.
Can I just clarify with Borroloola again, is it currently cut off but for road access? That's
correct. So the highway to Borroloola is cut off at the moment through other normal wet weather conditions, not generally associated with this tropical low.
Do you have any idea when that access can be expected to be restored yet, or is it too early?
At this stage, we've had a really good wet season in terms of the rain across that central area, and that rain continues to maintain the water on the ground in those locations, which continues to create road closures. At this stage, I can't answer that question. It will depend on what nature does.
The MacArthur River mine, are you aware of any impacts this cyclone could have on that?
At this stage, the trajectory that I've seen of the cyclone moves between Robinson River and Borroloola, which means that the MacArthur River mine, as I can see at this stage, won't be a direct directly impacted by the cyclone itself.
Have you been in conversations at all with the managers at MacArthur River Mine, or is that not necessary at this stage?
So in terms of localised arrangements, we have a local controller and a local emergency management committee. Their role and responsibility is to engage with the local stakeholders. MacArthur River Mine would be one of those local stakeholders, and that that engagement would be happening at the local level. In the Emergency Operations Centre, we do have functional groups such as industry that are reaching out and talking to all relevant stakeholders that are in the path of the wet weather system.
This cyclone is also expected to have some impact on Queensland. Are you in conversations with the Queensland authorities at the moment?
At this stage, there hasn't been a requirement to do so.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned telecommunications are down. Are authorities such as yourself in those local areas still able to maintain comms?
Yes, so we have our own communications with our police officers on the ground, so via either satellite phone or our radio network, so we can continue to communicate with police officers on the ground, and in doing so, our police officers on the ground can have localised contact with stakeholders in community. So we have not had any issues in terms of communicating things through to Borroloola.
You mentioned human movement, and if it's flooding, forget it. For people that are using road movement, what restrictions or what advice would you offer them?
Sure. So if you're travelling, if you have a need to travel to a location where there's a road closure in place, you can apply to the Department of Infrastructure Planning and Logistics. There's a linkage on the road report app where people can apply to bypass the road closure sign and lawfully travel to the location. Obviously that's assessed by the Department of Infrastructure Planning and Logistics, taking into consideration the condition of the road and the vehicle to be used to travel to the location. Otherwise, we encourage anyone else that is travelling to any of those locations, if there is a sign saying road closed, do not go through and do not pass the road closed signage. As I said yesterday, it's really important in terms of understanding that if you pass one of those road closed signs and you become stuck, bogged, or in need of help or rescue, you're detracting our local police officers, diverting them from the fundamental jobs that they should be doing in community to protect community and keep community safe, to an event or an emergency that should never have existed if people had read and done what they were told.
It's clearly been a busy week for police and emergency services. How are people feeling on the ground in Borroloola, emergency services personnel?
I guess, this weather event that we've got coming towards Borroloola and Robinson River, because it's not actually heading towards Borroloola itself, is a wet season event. It is wet, it's raining, it's windy, it is normal. It's just that it's been called a tropical cyclone, and we have to up what we do in terms of our state of readiness and preparation. But other than that, they're doing what they do normally, and that's keeping people safe and continuing to engage with stakeholders in community to make sure that everyone else has that feeling of safety, and that we're looking after people to make sure they have the necessities for life, critical goods, critical infrastructure and all those things.
With the system moving back over the top end, how worried are you about the risk of further flooding in some of those catchments that have just recently come up?
Good question. So in the last few weeks we have had a lot of rain in that central area, and there's still a lot of water on road and the ground, and certainly that's one of the things that various functional groups will be looking at is in the if then what now space. What do we need to do now to prepare for further flooding in those communities that were affected just recently? And that is first and foremost on our mind, and as we continue to receive advice and guidance from the Bureau of Meteorology, we'll start working on what we need to do to make sure those communities remain safe and that they have food and other essentials to sustain life during an adverse weather event.
And are you considering the possibility of the Stewart Highway having to be closed again yet?
So Stewart Highway continues to undergo repairs and maintenance from the last weather event that we had go through. There are detours in place in certain sections of the Stewart Highway. this weather event will cause some, slow down some of those repairs and maintenance, and that's why we ask drivers to exercise caution and abide by any traffic control that's in place around those the repairs.
Are you thinking it's possible that there'll have to be a closure altogether?
I don't think so. However, it's it's wet season and anything can happen with the weather. At the end of the day, we plan for it, and we'll make sure that any sort of interruptions like that will be minimised, having regard to the fact that nature will do what nature does.
All good?
I think so.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.